thing about Goliath, I think a lot of folks want to really hype it up, which I mean, in fairness, it does deserve to be hyped up because I mean, it's a friggin' massive tyrannosaur. But a lot of this has to be within context, and this is why I like Viv's videos because he says like, "Hey, look, this information could change. This is just a femur, so take this stuff with a grain of salt and be prepared for it to change." So that's why I like his videos.
Yeah. The main thing I do find a bit annoying though is as I said to you earlier, like I see people like very much try and be very like picky about weight estimates sometimes. Because I know someone who, because I'd said that like I saw something saying that Acro Camphosaurus was estimated at 4.9 metric tons. They immediately got like very pissy about it and said that it's actually more, up around like 5.8 metric tons. And I've seen other people do this as well. That's what I've said to people. Like, you got to remember too that depending on the author and also the mathematical methods being used to actually estimate the weight, it can very much vary a lot. And not just that,
Right.
but then also obviously the specimen being used also.
Exactly, because like at the end of the day, like the overarching point that everybody makes, as they rightly should, is we don't know. Like we know dinosaurs had hollow bones because they were related to birds, but we don't know the density of a lot of their muscles. There's a lot we just don't know, period, when it comes to them.
Not just that, but also worth noting that well, like I remember back when I was about 15, I'd like very much ballooned up in weight. And it wasn't one of those things where it's like I had a massive like growth spurt and I'm now like, 7'5" or something. No,
Mhm.
I'm 5'9". No, it was just I I just ended up eating like very unhealthily around that sort of age. And at the time I think I got up to 115 kilos, um,
Oh
which
wow.
is 250 pound. And I was probably like 5'6", 5'7" at the time, by the way.
Oh Jesus.
So
Oh
it's like,
wow. You were heavier than me.
that's like, so yeah, that's like very not good to be that sort of weight at that sort of height. However, like after just, I think the main thing I did was just eating less because I went into this phase of like going very nocturnal, and I wouldn't really eat all that much during that phase. So then I'd like drop down to about 70 kilos or about 150 pounds. And then more recently, in January last year, I think it was around like 95 to 100 kilos, so about 220 pounds. Now, last time I weighed myself, I was 76. So that's like, I think 160 pound.
Oh wow.
So
Damn.
you probably find that some of those specimens, depending on like seasonal changes or whatever, they might have varied also in weight themselves. Like what might, based on its femur, might have been, say, a 10-ton specimen. Depending on various things, it might have varied throughout its life in adulthood from like 9 to 11 ton.
Yeah, exactly. That is one thing I think it may have been Viv who brought this up, but they were talking about like a big thing to keep in mind is like again, we don't know the state of the dinosaur. Like again, as you were saying, what was the season? Was their belly full? Like were they just
Yeah.
really out of shape? Like did they not move much? Did they just get out of hibernation? Like
Or when I've like checked out stuff on like lion versus tiger enthusiasts, here and there when they like look at tiger or lion specimens that have been weighed, one of the first things they ask is, was it empty bellied? Because according to these people, a tigers and lions can have like up to 30 kilos worth of food in their stomachs when their belly is full. According to some, well, I guess would be considered like more reputable stuff online, I recall reading through, I think it was a animal care manual from, I think it was like the World Zoo Association, I think it's called. I can't remember the organization's name. Um,
mhm.
they had a care manual available on their website on lions. And when I read through there, I think they said that a lion can have up to like 20% of its body weight in food in its stomach.
Well, yeah, I imagine that's with any animal. Like if they ate or not and everything, that could change the weight. Like we say like, "Hey, this
Well,
animal
hey,
can weigh this much," but a lot of people miss that important context. Sorry, go ahead.
well, I've noticed here and there when I've like, especially now that I've leaned down 76 kilo, I've noticed here and there when I like eat a lot in a day, uh, my stomach does start to like bulge out a bit, and like you can see that with big cats as well when they have a lot to eat.
Yeah, I imagine with any animal, like, you can see them as like, okay, they're a little bit fatter, that means they just ate, they're fat and happy, right? Or whatever it is they say these days. But it makes
Mm,
complete sense, though. So, like,
yeah.
to your point, a lot of people miss that important context. They just want how big is number, but they miss the context with a lot of things. Like, for example, a lot of people say this is like, "Oh, look at these orcas. They're fucking taking out these great whites," or whatever it is people want to say. But one thing, and I think there was a video, a guy by the name of Bugs in Biology, he pointed out in a video of his, is that most orcas take out smaller great whites. And I think I have a theory as to why that is. But to the point, could an orca take out an adult great white? Probably. I don't like that that's the case, but probably could, just looking at the facts on the table. But a lot of people miss the
Mm.
context that what they mostly hunt are the young ones, which any good predator would. You want to take off the young and the inexperienced because that's the path of least resistance. As to why they go after the young ones, and I there was a video I was watching about this guy. He was laying in the water and he had some fish in a little bottle and it was sitting between his legs. And there were baby lemon sharks and they were looking for the bottle, but for some reason they just couldn't find it. But when you check the description, he said that the adults found the fish no problem. So what it sounds like, or what that implies, is that when sharks are young, their senses aren't as sharp or as honed in. So when it comes to the orcas and great white argument, they probably go after younger white sharks because their senses aren't as honed in or as advanced. So it's easier to catch them or jump them. At least that's my theory.
I'd say it's probably that plus like leopards, if I remember correctly. Um, if I remember correctly, leopards generally in like most reference books you'll read, it will be listed as they'll vary from like 17 to 90 kilo in weight. I think sometimes even like smaller than that, but well, I've also seen some stuff saying that apparently some leopards have been recorded over 100 kilo. Um, but uh, they can take on stuff much larger, about like 2 to 3 times their size. And there was even one, as far as I know, this was a confirmed report of a leopard killing a 900 kilogram eland. Right, that's a big
Really?
antelope species, I think it is. As far as I know, that was a confirmed report.
Huh.
I need to look into it further, but I've seen it mentioned in two relatively authoritative reference works.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
I remember that was pretty shocking. But generally speaking, as you know, like any typical predator, they tend to go for stuff that's smaller than themselves. So you
Yeah,
probably find it's a mixture of both of those because, well, it's a bit easier to take on something around the same size as yourself or smaller than it is something larger.
exactly. That and orcas are multiple times heavier than great whites. Like in some cases, they're like 3 times heavier than them. So that's a clear weight advantage that they have.
One of the things that also makes me wonder too, when it comes to T Rex and how big it might have been, is uh, well, I remember reading something saying that there was a study, I think back in 2020, where I think they estimated that at any given time there would have been roughly, I think they said 20,000 T Rexes alive at any given time, and that for the entire duration of the species' existence, there was roughly 2.5 billion T Rexes. By comparison, there was, well, as far as I know, I think we're up around like 60 known T Rex specimens, with I think somewhere around the 40 mark being adults, give or take a few. I can't really remember the numbers right now, it's been a while. But that means that, well, the obvious thing there is that the sample size we have is nothing more than a little blip on the radar. But the other thing that I think is worth knowing is that, like, you look at some species populations, some of them, they have splits in them, like they're fragmented, to
Yes.
which can that can be for like just natural habitat changes, or the main reason you see that sort of stuff's being the cause of is like human habitat destruction. Obviously, like I said, there can be some more like natural stuff to it, like you know, you have Kodiak Island with its brown bears, which are separate from the ones on the mainland. And I think that's the same with some other things. Like I think they have tiger snakes in Tasmania from memory. I might be wrong, right?
I
But
believe they
those
do.
are, yeah, I think they do. And then you also have tiger snakes on mainland Australia. Or not just that, but there's also the coastal taipan has its own unique subspecies in Papua New Guinea, known as the Papuan taipan, which is separate from the coastal taipan found in Queensland, Australia. From memory, I think they also have a population of king brown or mulga snakes in Papua New Guinea, which are again separate from the ones on mainland Australia. The reason why I bring that up is because, like, if I remember correctly, well, we share crocs with we share the saltwater croc with most parts of Asia, a good chunk of Asia. I recall reading a paper that talked about the sizes of reported crocodiles. Well, I skimmed through it to the Australian section, and they said that generally, when it comes to saltwater crocs, Australians tend to say that we've got the biggest. Like I've heard my dad say that. I've heard him say
Yeah,
that we share crocs with Asia, but ours are the bigger ones. However, as far as I know, it seems to not really be the case. Like as far as I know, the two largest confirmed saltwater crocodiles were from, I think one was from Papua New Guinea and the other was from the Philippines. That was Lo Long. Uh, and then the third largest confirmed croc was from Australia, that being Old Charlie. The largest one, that was the one from the Papua New Guinea. I think that one was called the Obo crocodile or the Fly River croc. Old Charlie measured, I think, 20 feet 2 inches. Low long was 23 3 inches, so only an inch longer than old Charlie. However, the oboe croc, from memory, measured, I think the skin was 20 feet 4 inches. However, there was a segment missing, so it's believed to have potentially been over 20 feet 8 inches,
oh man,
which, while we're 4 inches on a 20 plus animal isn't really that much of a difference,
exactly.
but still, like that's a bit that puts it way out of league compared to old Charlie and Lolong, where you know that's a bit more of a toss up considering it's a 1 inch difference between the two of them. You might as well say they're tied there. But the reason why I bring that up is because, like I said, Asia has the largest salties as far as it's known, as far as I know. You then have jaguars, where, if I remember correctly, Mexico's jaguar population is smaller than the ones in the Pantanal of Brazil. Like the ones in the Pantanal average something like 100 kilos for males. Meanwhile, I think I saw something saying somewhere around like 50 or 60 kilos for Mexico. So it's like that's a bit of a difference. So one of the things I was wondering is like perhaps there were some areas where T-Rex roamed where, say, adults might have averaged, say, I don't know, 7 ton, but it might have been more of a variance of like, say, 6 to 8. Then you'd have some areas where the average is like 9 ton, but it would vary from like 8 to 10. And then from there you'd have ones where it might be like 11 ton, with the variance being 10 to 12 or even higher.
Now, see, let me ask you, well, two questions rather. But first one, to your point. So you remember my video where I covered, hey, there's three different lineages of white sharks. Do you think that there were dinosaurs that could have had the same case, where it's like where technically they're all the same species, but there's different lineages as per your point. Like, hey, there's in this lineage over in this general area, they're around 7 tons. But over in this other
Yeah.
area, it's a different lineage, even though they're both Tyrannosaurus Rex. These guys over here grow to roughly 11 tons. Would you say that's plausible?
I wouldn't be too surprised. Like, I think there has been some occasions where I think there have been some subspecies on occasions proposed for different dinosaurs. Heck, like I think at one point, I'm trying to remember. I think it was with Brachiosaurus.
Of course.
So you had Giraffatitan, which I think it's from memory it's now distinct from Brachiosaurus, but right? So for a while you had Brachiosaurus altithorax, which is the American type species for brachy, which was discovered in 1903. But then I think it was the 1920s or 1930s, you then had Giraffatitan, which was known at the time as Brachiosaurus branchi. However, then in, I think it was the 80s, Gregory Poole proposed Giraffatitan as a subgenus. So you had Brachiosaurus altithorax, and then you had Brachiosaurus giraffatitan, branchi.
Okay.
And I think there's also been a couple more occasions like that. But from what I know with that subgenus stuff, I think that's really been more so just used for amphibians. So this was like one of the more like ultimate strange cases of Gregory Poole and his family tree of dinosaurs.
Okay, yeah, that I could see as to how they would get that. Again, ultimately, like, we don't know. But
I think,
I think it is entirely plausible that there could have been different lineages of species.
yeah. I mean, hey, like, there's currently two subspecies of lion, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
I know someone who's dubbed them the northern lion and southern lion. So you have the northern one, as he calls it, which is Panthera leo, which is above the Sahara Desert in northern Africa, and it's also what I think is known as the Asiatic lion in India. And then you also have the sub-Saharan ones, which is what he calls the southern lion, Panthera leo melanochaeta, which from memory gets somewhere between like 10 and 20% heavier than Leo.
Okay. Well, I get that also. I guess that's where we have to bring up what we were talking about earlier. Like, did they weigh
Yeah.
multiple specimens to be like, okay, is it consistently 10 to 20%, or what's the context with them? Did you weigh
Mm,
the amounts or all the ones that you weighed? Was it that, hey, the southern ones, they were just on empty stomachs, or were they fed? Like, that's where we want to ask what was the proper
true.
context with how they weighed them. But story for another time. The second question I had for you, and it doesn't really pertain to this topic, but it's one that I proposed to Overseer because it's a thought that crossed my mind the other day. So we all know that dinosaurs went extinct during the Cretaceous period. The asteroid hit, and while the asteroid didn't directly kill the dinosaurs, it would start. It's what started the beginning of the end for them. But my question is, of how a lot of crocodiles and stuff they go into this thing called estivation or brumation or whatever it is, hibernation for
Hmm.
reptiles. Do you think dinosaurs had that ability with them being warm blooded, at least to our knowledge, warm blooded? And if they didn't, do you think that would have been a contributing factor to them going extinct as to why we don't see them, but we still see crocs? As in, like when the asteroid hit and the whole world went to hell in a handbasket, their ability to basically turn 90% of their body off and just sit in a spot for an extended period of time could have allowed them to wait out the extinction level event.
Maybe, maybe not. Like, you probably find that obviously that a lot of the larger ones, I reckon, would have just been killed off anyway.
Yeah, makes sense.
Larger animals just tend to go when there's extinctions because, like, I was talking with, I think it was my outdoor education teacher, where I said to him of like one of the reasons, we managed to kill off such large megafauna like the woolly mammoth is because, well, they have very slow reproduction and they tend to be fewer in an ecosystem compared to smaller animals.
Yes.
So, yeah, obviously they'd go. I don't think brumation would have saved them. And not to that, but I think I saw something saying that they reckon that you probably find that the extinction and its what do you call aftermath lasted probably for a little bit more than just like just it was there 1 minute, gone the next.
It was just, and as far as I know, we don't have any evidence as to whether they did or didn't. But I definitely think it's an interesting thing to think about because brumation or estivation or whatever you want to call it didn't just come out of nowhere. It had to have started from somewhere. And since,
Yeah,
dinosaurs are related to crocs, I'm wondering, like, would that have been something dinosaurs would have had? And if they
perhaps.
didn't, would their lack of ability, would it have been a contributing factor to their downfall?
I mean, who knows? Maybe some of the smaller ones would have been able to have lived at least a bit longer. But well, clearly it didn't save them.
Yeah. which leads me to
That
believe that they didn't have it because crocodiles did exist when dinosaurs did, and the
mm,
crocodile's ability to basically turn their whole body off and just wait out the extinction level, and dinosaurs not having that ability, the crocs were able to survive and the dinosaurs weren't. At least it's an interesting thing to think about. But again, we don't have any evidence, at least none that I'm aware of. I know when it comes to
because
sharks, and that's actually like the next video I have coming up. I have two videos that are cooking at the moment, and I'm finally actually starting to get some time to actually crank them on because I haven't uploaded in a while. But at least with sharks, part of the reason they're so stubborn is they always have the option of going stupid deep. That's always an option that
mm,
they have. They don't have to breathe air, so they can always go down. But also, sharks possess the ability for asexual reproduction. Them having basically a very generalist diet. All of those are contributing factors as to why they're able to survive and have survived all five mass extinctions. But I'll go a bit deeper into it when my video comes out. But I know it's
mm.
different with every animal, so I figured it's just an interesting thing to think about. Like, could dinosaurs not having estivation have been a contributing factor to them going extinct?
Well, when it comes to like the origins of it, could be something that perhaps crocs just evolved independently from dinosaurs.
Which is plausible if you ask me. And then, of course, that people would ask and be like, well, hey, well, then what happened with birds if birds are technically dinosaurs? And as far as we know, birds don't have estivation.
Yeah,
Just food for thought.
indeed. Oh, speaking of sharks, I remember I don't know like how much in the way of like Australian media you would have in the US besides, of course, Bluey and the Wiggles, I think maybe as well.
Of course.
There's this one Australian Canadian produced TV show that I ended up rewatching a couple nights ago called The Deep, and I think I mentioned it to you beforehand, but just as like a refresher, essentially it's like this family that live on this submarine, high-tech advanced submarine, and travel the world exploring deep sea mysteries. So it tends to have like a lot of cryptozoological stuff in it. You can probably guess where I'm going with this.
Let me guess. Somewhere along the way, yeah, I think you did mention it. I think, but at some point they mentioned
Indeed.
either giant squids or megalodon or something along those lines.
I mean, they had a episode where their ship got attacked by colossal squid, but they also had one that featured not one but two megalodons.
Of course it did.
You can find the episode online, and I remember just being sat there thinking while watching it the other night, like, "Oh, Sharktoz would love this."
I think you actually did send it to me now that I think about it. And I was just like, there's no effing way they did this. But of course they did. But and I think
Um,
this needs to be another video of mine where it's like Megalodon wasn't the only big shark during its time.
yeah.
I know you're
I think,
particularly fond of Cretoxy rhino.
yeah, that was the shark that I grew up with, thanks to I think one documentary my mother got me, and also a couple episodes of Dinosaur King I had. Not Dinosaur King, Dinosaur Train. That was the shark I grew up with, the Ginsu shark. But anyway, if I remember correctly, in that episode of the Deep, I think it's titled "Strange Migration." They feature the megalodon having vocal capabilities, so it's heard roaring and growling.
Oh my god.
If I remember correctly, it's shown to be able to swim at incredible speeds and have, I guess, enough torque to its name to freaking drag down a submarine and at least equal it in power when the submarine fights back.
Oh god.
Obviously, it has the shark trope of. Oh, actually, no, they do have some interesting speculation with it because they feature two megalodons, with it being stated that one's probably just protecting its mate whenever it's attacking them, with
That's
them
not
speculating that potentially they mate for life.
that's not a thing in sharks. I see, now that you mentioned I couldn't watch this thing, it sounded like it's from Shark Week. It's like this is what people do. Like you've heard of Marvel Rivals, right?
Yeah,
The game which is Overwatch but Marvel. Everyone's saying stuff
yeah.
like because I do play that game. Everyone's like, "Oh, who do you mean? I bet you mean Jeff the Shark." No, I mean Magneto. I don't even like Jeff the Shark. And why is that? I say all the time that
It's
sharks aren't
it,
monsters, but they're not
it's too
puppy
stupid
dogs
for you.
either. Sharks aren't puppy dogs either. Folks, what is Jeff? A freaking puppy dog shark. And I don't like Jeff because they basically took the head of a shark and stuck it on a dog and called that, "Oh, look at that. That's a land shark." And it's all cute and adorable. No, you took away everything that makes a shark except the head and teeth. And then you just stuck the mammal traits on it and called it, "Oh, look, that's a shark dog." No. F Jeff. I do not like Jeff the
It,
shark.
get, it gets even funnier because if I remember correctly, they also state in there that the megalodon is its closest relative is the great white, and
Oh,
I
no.
think that's been no. Actually, no. I think it was around the same time the show actually released that that sort of stuff starts to be questioned.
Not gonna lie, that's when I would have turned it off. As soon as they would have said it's like, "Oh yeah, its closest ancestor was the great white," I would have turned the show off like right there on the spot. If I didn't already punch a hole in my TV.
It gets better. So
How?
in- so a couple episodes later. So besides the ship, they have it's called the Aranax, by the way. They also then have like vehicles that go alongside it. So they have like a mini sub called the Rover, but then they also have these mech suits they call Knights. With all of them having like different utilities to them and being of varying sizes and for different purposes also. Right?
Why do I get the feeling I would lose brain cells watching this show?
It gets pretty interesting at one point. So they have this one episode where the rover gets like EMP'd basically, and they find out that what it was a dolphin where it had been wearing some sort of harness on it. So I take it the inspiration was from that whole thing of the military attempting to train dolphins for warfare.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know the
So
whole story about that, but story for another time. Continue.
So then they're like trying to help this dolphin. So they've gotten the harness off. And then they're trying to actually train the dolphin to be social enough to actually be able to go with its or find itself a new pod. Because by the looks of it, it only seems to know like sociability with humans. Later on into that episode, they have right the dolphins found himself a pod, but guess what ends up happening? A great white attacks, and it's basically just a smaller, slightly modified model of the megalodon model from memory. They have this scene where one of the characters like basically uses himself and the knight he's in as like a shield to like stop the great white from charging at the dolphin, and everyone's screaming at him to get out of the way and not get harmed by the shark, and everyone else is sitting there in fear of it. And I'm sat there thinking, you're in a mech suit. I don't think the shark is going to bite down on 2 tons worth of steel and electronics.
Exactly. Well, even more to the point, why is everyone always trying to defend the dolphins? Like, has nobody
Well,
caught on to the fact that dolphins are ocean Satan?
oh, by the way, in case, as you can guess, it did the cliche trope of the dolphin saves the human.
That's oh my god. This, of course, because because it's the same thing like in Jurassic Park movies. Oh, it eats plants. Herbivores are good. Oh, it has teeth. It's carnivore. Carnivores are bad, and they will attack and chase the humans with no agency and no plan of self-preservation.
Okay, now here's the one that really just caused me to lose it as I was just sat there thinking, holy Christ. If I remember really, Greenland sharks have they tend to be very like slow animals because of their metabolism, and they don't really like go for large prey. Like even though they can reach similar lengths to a great white, they're not really like a great white.
Yeah,
They feature one episode where they find a polar bear floating out on this like chunk of ice that's like barely enough for the polar bear to even stand up on, and it's being
mhm.
circled by a Greenland shark.
Oh my god, are you
Later,
serious? Oh,
later on into the episode, they've saved the polar bear. They've found out the thing's pregnant, so they've like now because the bear was getting too dangerous to keep on the submarine because it's an Arctic killing machine. If it's white, good night. They get it off the sub, and then it's swimming to shore towards like this iceberg or something. 4 Greenland sharks come to attack it, so then they have to try and hold off the Greenland sharks that are moving at like probably like 80 times faster than any Greenland shark has ever moved.
because of course the sharks always have to be evil.
Not just that, but I think on like some tie-in media, they state one of the knights, right, the mech suits, as being around like 10 feet tall. There's a shot of it's next to a tail fin of one of the Greenland sharks, and it's about equal in height with the tail fin. So I guess these things are probably like 100 feet long.
Because of course, according to people, sharks always have to be the bad guy. See, this is why at some point I'm gonna release this shark story involving my main shark teeth. And I'm actually gonna
Uh,
show sharks done right.
I'm just sat there thinking, like, I know The Deep is like, it's a kid's show, right? Like, I watched this thing when I was probably like, I'd say 11. But sometimes you gotta look and think, this is too freaking stupid.
It is, and
But
that's look, that's how kids get started with thinking, "Oh my god, sharks are the bad guy." No, they're not.
the other thing's worth noting too is they already feature a lot of sea monsters in this. Like as I said, there's a lot of cryptozoological stuff in here. Like I think you had the super eel classification of sea serpent that Bernard Wavelman's thought of. The super eel is featured in an episode. Not
SCP-3000.
that, but yes, that thing. They also feature the Kraken is like one of the more important ones they feature in there. It's known as the Terror, where it's hiding behind the gates of an ancient city known as Lemuria. Where, if I remember correctly, Lemuria was, if I remember correctly, originally the name given to a hypothetical continent, which was used as an explanation for how lemurs are found in Madagascar and nowhere else, hence the name Lemuria. If I remember correctly, they also feature Moby Dick, or at least something that looks to be Moby Dick.
Of course.
I'm trying to think also, I think it was the UB-85 monster, a supposed plesiosaur-esque monster that had climbed onto the top of a German U-boat during World War One, I think, and
What?
apparently it damaged the ship so much that they had to scuttle it. They have their own take on that monster in this show, where
I
it turns
love
out
you
to be
smoking, but I want some.
yeah, they feature quite a few different cryptozoological pieces from memory. Plesiosaurs even live in this universe.
Of course they do.
Well, they're listed as plesiosaurs on the Deep's official website, but in the show they just refer to them as dragons.
Dragons, like, that okay, sure, yeah, we'll go with it. Jesus Christ.
I'm trying to think. There's quite a few other ones. I said I think it'd be interesting to see Truth is Scarier than Fiction. Check it out.
Are you
Considering,
talking about,
like
like,
as I
the
said,
YouTube channel guy?
yeah,
Oh,
because
yeah,
some
he
of
helped
these,
me with my Megalodon video.
yeah, because well, as I said to you, some of those things are actual like real, well, I guess real-ish cryptids that have been talked about in real life, and people have claimed to have sighted them. Like also the Baltic Sea anomaly, a weird sort of structure that was found on the floor of the Baltic Sea that looked to some people like a spaceship. That is featured in the deep, where eventually it turns out to be just a regular rock structure, but it's been carved out by like these super powerful mantis shrimps.
Mantis shrimp is crazy. Like, mantis shrimp, and they went and they carved stuff out just to troll humans.
Yeah.
Sure.
They also do feature their own fictional creatures known as the monumentals, which are basically kaiju-sized versions of more normal animals. Like as I said, they have the kraken, which is considered a monumental in there. They also feature a giant electric ray that can produce thunderstorms. There's also a giant pistol shrimp capable of making humongous booms that send everything flying.
Pistol shrimp was, like, the size of our foot. Those things could kill us.
Yeah, well, this thing's like, now Godzilla size. I'm trying to think. There's also, the whole thing of like people finding islands and then they just mysteriously sink, and it turns out it's either a giant fish or turtle. They feature a monumental turtle that does just that. Where someone had built a hotel resort on the back of it.
On some Avatar stuff.
Yeah, until the thing bloody sinks into the ocean, and well, there goes your hotel.
I'm still on that mantis shrimp. Like, do they not realize something? That's got that thing would punch holes in boats.
I'm trying to remember. I think there was also a giant jellyfish that had tentacles that could burn through metal,
Because that's not terrifying at all.
and it's like kilometers long.
Now that is a legit SCP. Holy smokes.
Like, I know you said you don't think you could actually watch this show because of all the stupidity with the sharks, but you can find it on YouTube for free if you're ever interested.
Maybe I check out like clips here and there, but for the most part, Jesus Christ, I don't think I could get through it. I'm gonna keep it a stab with you.
But as I said, with some of the shark stuff, I'm just sat there thinking like, holy Christ, this thing is stupid.
I'll be honest with you, dog. I probably couldn't get through it.
Oh, hey, I think they showed like the polar bear I mentioned earlier. They show it knocking out one of their knights and actually damaging it. Like I said, a freaking mech suit. All it did was give me vibes of Have you seen that Grizzly Man? I think he was known as the dude who built a grizzly bear suit. It looked like a Jaeger from Pacific Rim.
But why?
If I remember correctly, the are we talking about the show still or the dude who built the suit?
The dude who built the suit. Why would you build a polar bear suit and go out with a bunch of polar bears? Why?
If I remember correctly, this guy was about grizzly bears, not polar bears. But
That's
the reason he
worse.
built the reason he built the suit. And by the way, this wasn't just one suit. He made like 6 or 7 iterations of this thing before he died in a car accident where a truck exploded from memory. Rest in peace. I think he even won a couple of awards for a documentary he made on this freaking thing, by the way. The grizzly bear suit. He made this
God.
thing. Apparently, he was attacked by a bear once. From what I remember of the story, he was attacked by a bear. And then from there, he decided that as a more like safe way for people to actually study bears in their natural habitat, he decided to become Iron Man and build this suit.
At what point do we say humans have completely gotten rid of their self-preservation instinct? Like, at what point are we going to say that?
It's even funnier. There was even videos filmed of him giving his like own tests of this suit, where he was the person in the suit. Like, if I remember correctly, he had someone in a car come charging towards him at, I think they said like 30 miles an hour, and you just see him bounce off the car while in the suit. There's also a video clip of someone hitting him with a wooden pole they had found. Then, if I remember correctly, there's also a part where you see him go tumbling down like this little slope. I think they also, you know, how in some like films you see people set traps where it'll be like a giant log placed up somewhere and then it just comes swinging down to hit them. I think he did something like that as well. He
Yeah,
somehow survived it.
but he
It gets
survived
even
all that,
funnier.
so it took a fucking exploding truck to kill him. Jesus.
It gets even funnier. He got to test the suit proper.
Against what?
I found this as a newspaper article. He found someone who had bears, and they
Isn't that
weren't grizzlies, they were Kodiaks.
isn't that illegal to have whole ass bears?
I think this was someone who had them for like some sort of legal business, as far as I know.
What
Like,
legal
I think they might have
business
been,
requires you to have a Kodiak bear?
I can't remember. I think it might have been like some sort of wildlife preservation organization or like one of those places where, you know, like people dump off like used circus animals or something. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember all the details because it was like probably 2 years ago I read this. But the guy, right, he got someone who had a couple bears. He had, I think it was, I think they said like a 300-pound female Kodiak, and then he also had a 1,300-pound male. In case you're wondering how that went, with the female, he was allowed in the enclosure while in the suit. She did not come up to it, which they reckon was because it was of how alien looking it was. In the case of the 1,300-pound Kodiak, however, they threw in the suit in bits and pieces just to see what it would do. He didn't get in the suit while this thing was in there. No, the guy wouldn't let him. If I remember correctly, it ended up being a pretty good strength test for the suit because at one point it actually laid down on the torso part of the suit, and the torso actually withstood that.
I mean, there's other ways to test things like that, but I mean, sure, sure. I mean, Jesus.
I love how this guy was sat there like, I'm gonna become Iron Man, basically.
And it's like Iron Man is a fictional character. You're not Iron Man. And of all things to test it up against, why are you going to test it up against a goddamn bear?
Personally, for me, I just found it so freaking hilarious that he got, as far as I understand, he was attacked by a bear at one point, and that's where he got the idea for this suit. This literally sounds like a superhero story.
Jesus Christ.
I think his name was Roy Hertubes, to which really that's only like what a couple syllables away from being Hercules. So he might as well have made that thing a proper mech suit. Give it
Someone,
like hydraulic powers for like, you know, assisted strength.
somebody in the audience probably knows. They'll probably put it in the comments somewhere. To begin to kind of wrap things up for this recording, really quick, Calvin, can you tell the audience about what projects you currently have in the works? I know you have the Mosasaur video.
Well, like I said earlier in the live stream, one of the things I'd like to do at some point is perhaps make a video going over like just the size of T Rex in terms of like largest specimens known at the moment, and then probably also stuff on like speculation throughout the years. Because, like I said, it's been speculated as far back as the late '90s that T Rex might have been up to 15 ton for the largest individuals. Another one is well, I think I've told you about this piece of media as well at one point. You have Thunderbirds Are Go. It's a TV series from the 1960s. Um, and then it's been like it's had some reiterations since. Like I think there was a 2004 film that was basically a Spy Kids ripoff. To the point that if I remember correctly, the original guy behind Thunderbirds, he had said right he refused to watch it when it premiered in theaters, but when he did finally watch it on DVD, he said that Team America World Police was a more faithful adaptation to the original Thunderbirds than the Thunderbirds movie. And then also there was a 2015 reboot series that ended up being made, but basically just to summarize Thunderbirds for anyone who hasn't seen it, there's this secret organization known as International Rescue, and they specialize in rescuing people from all sorts of dangers that your typical authorities for that sort of stuff can't really do. And they have all sorts of futuristic, high tech equipment and aircraft for those jobs. Like this thing was basically like 90% of my childhood. While I don't think it's really well known in the US, it's very even though it's now the 1960s, it's still relatively well known and popular here in both Australia and the UK.
If you find
All
any
right.
videos of it on YouTube, send those to me. I'll check those out.
Yeah, you can find the entire 1960s series and the reboot series on YouTube. People have uploaded every single episode.
Oh,
But
wow.
the reason why I bring that up is because my personal favorite vehicle of the Thunderbirds fleet is Thunderbird 2, where it's designed more so as like a cargo transport vehicle for basically any sort of equipment international rescue needs. And it's probably like the coolest vehicle of the entire fleet for me, considering it's shown not just to be a equipment carrier, it's also been shown to be more of a heavy lifting vehicle. They've even sent this thing both underwater and into frickin' space for rescue missions. This thing can do basically everything. It's like the AK-47 of rescue vehicles.
AK-47 of rescue vehicles is a great analogy.
It's like leopards. It is freaking one of the most versatile things on the planet. But anyway, if I remember correctly, they state in official guidebooks for I think pretty much every era of Thunderbirds that the max payload capacity is 100 ton for Thunderbird 2. The reason why I bring that up is because there's some episodes in the reboot series that I noticed where it seems like Thunderbird 2 is shown to be a whole lot stronger than they actually state in tie-in media. Because, like I said, in guidebooks they say 100 ton. There's a scene in one episode where an oil rig ends up cracking in half, and
Oh,
Thunderbird 2 is shown having to lift the half that's sinking into the water back into place to try and hold it there so that they can rescue people who are trapped underneath that sinking half. According to a quick Google search, the lightest oil rigs out there are somewhere around like 10 to 20,000 ton, to which that's a massive increase compared to the listed 100-ton carrying capacity of Thunderbird 2.
I was gonna say, you
Yeah?
could be a salesman for Thunderbirds, man.
Yeah. So I remember saying to Gecko about it that considering it's going to be the 60th anniversary of the original Thunderbirds this year, I'd like to actually do a video seeing how many dinosaurs could Thunderbird 2 actually lift based on that one scene. Because if
Yes.
it can lift roughly half of a 20,000 ton oil platform, so roughly 10,000 ton, assuming, that means that, well, that's like what, 100 Argentina sauruses,
A
assuming all of
lot
them
of sauropods.
ton. Yeah, like that's a pretty That's one hell of a machine.
No kidding. You see, now you got me about to start doing research on Thunderbirds. On on my end, as I said, I have 2 videos cooking up per some of what we were talking about earlier. I actually do wanna do a video on Cretoxyrhina, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna drag you into it as well since, that's your prehistoric shark. So, yeah, that's about all I've got going on for me. But, hey, wanted to thank you for coming on to the show, always good to have you and your humanity jokes and all.
Humanzy chimpanzee. In all honesty, I think you've probably said humanzy more than I have this year so far.
I wonder why that is. I wonder who got that on me.
I've
But no,
gotten bored of saying humanity because Gecko's been desensitized to it, so I've had to try and find more things to try and piss him off with.
I get it though. But no, thanks for your time as always, Mr. Calvin.
You're welcome, Mr. Sharktoz.